Even long weekends are short, so why spend a second of this one on a drink run? Instead, get drinks delivered right to your door with Drizzly. Drizzly is the easiest way to find the best prices on beer, wine, and spirits, so you can get back to lighting those totally legal fireworks. Download the app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Because the long weekend will be over before this ad is. Must be 21 plus. Not available in all locations.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of JavaScript Jabber. Today on the panel we have Steve Edwards.
Hello from Portland.
We have AJ O'Neill.
Yo, coming at you live from sunny, pleasant Grove.
I am Amy Knight, coming at everyone from Nashville per usual. And we have a guest today, and I'm going to butcher his name because I've already forgotten how to pronounce it, but it is Lucas de Costa.
Yeah, exactly. You got it right. Yeah,
okay,
speaking
there
from
you go.
London.
Thank you for coming. Do you want to introduce yourself? And then after that, probably let us know what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm Lucas. Well, I am a software engineer. I live here in London, but I'm originally from Brazil. So I've been involved with plenty of open source communities. I'm a core maintainer of ChaiJS and Sinon.js. So I've done a lot of work on that, contributed to numerous other projects as well, like Node School, like Jest. And more recently, I've also written a book about JavaScript testing, given all the things I've done in the ecosystem. And I also write a lot on my blog, lucasfcosta.com, and I'm always speaking at conferences as well. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Leveling up is important. I spend at least an hour every day learning ways I can improve my business or take a break and listen to a good book. If you're looking to level up, I recommend you start out with the 12-week year as a system to plan out where you want to end up and how to get the results you want. You can get it free by going to audibletrial.com/code. That's audibletrial.com/code.
I am super excited to talk to you because I always say I don't have many strong opinions as far as programming goes, but I do have very strong opinions about testing. So whether it be unit testing, end-to-end testing, I love it. I don't know. I'm going to paint a little bit of a backstory for people that are on the fence about it, but basically my second job, I had on-call rotation, and there were really, by the time that I'd been there for a while, we had different people kind of scattered around, and there were really only two of us, and so we were on call every other week, and we had a really, really, really sweet tech stack, but almost no tests, which meant, not exaggerating, usually woken up in the middle of the night 2 to 3 times a night, on average a couple nights a week. So, and still, expected to be at your desk for, your 9 to whenever the next day. And it was exhausting, absolutely exhausting. We had a couple hackathons there, and I spent the entire hackathon weeks just writing tests because there are just so many regressions. And then also to the point where customers were, potentially not going to pay their bills because we had so many regressions. So yeah, I am a huge, huge, huge proponent of testing.
That's good. That's excellent. Yeah, that's one of the things with testing. I think the more time you invest in it, the less time you spend in the long run. So it's just it's such an essential practice. I think it touches as well so many points of what makes a good software delivery process that I think is just invaluable to invest in tests and automation. I think tests is a subset of automation that's probably one of the most valuable ones,
Yeah, it's almost like a precursor. You can't have continuous delivery until you have tests, in my opinion, or at least kind of some overarching tests so that you have some level of confidence in what you're getting out the door to your customers. But I guess maybe talk to us about, it sounds like you are mostly in the unit testing realm. Maybe we should start off very briefly, can you give the people listening maybe an overview of the different types of tests?
Yeah, absolutely. So on my book, basically, I divide tests into the traditional testing pyramid categories. So there are entrant tests, integration tests, and unit tests. I've seen people that like to have different divisions. I've seen, for example, I think it's Ken C. Dodds, if I'm not mistaken, he has a testing trophy where he has a bit of a different approach to it. I quite like the traditional approach. So basically, for the ones listening, the testing pyramid is basically a pyramid divided in 3 sections. So entrant tests come at the top, integration tests come in the middle, and unit tests come at the very base. So when you think about the structure of a pyramid, end-to-end tests come in the top because they're the ones that are less frequent, and they are the ones that are like that require more integration between the different parts of your system. So they have like you have them in less frequency, but they're the ones that deliver more value, but they take more time to write and they're more costful to maintain. Integration tests come in the middle because they're not so costful to write, but they're also end-to-end tests come at the top because they're less frequent and they're more costly. Then integration tests come in the middle because they're less costly than end-to-end tests, but they're also like a bit less valuable. And then unit tests come at the very base of the pyramid because they're very quick to write, easy to maintain, but they're not as valuable. So that's how I would separate the tests in different categories. And when I'm writing tests, I tend to keep the shape of the pyramid. So I write lots of unit tests as I'm developing. I'm a big fan of TDD, and I try to do that, with a lot of discipline. So my tests really resemble a lot the structure of the testing pyramid. I also write a lot of integration tests, but I also place a lot of value on end-to-end tests. And I try to make them as decoupled from the internals of my code as possible so they don't cost them as much. I don't know if that answers your question as you expected.
So
yeah, I think it does. Sorry, AJ, go ahead.
What were the 3 types or 4 types of tests you said? You said integration tests. Did you say entrant test?
No, sorry. So it's end-to-end at the very top.
Oh, end-to-end. End-to-end.
Yeah,
okay.
End-to-end, exactly. End-to-end, integration in the middle, and unit tests at the bottom. So yeah, so as you go to the top, you have more valuable, but tests are also more costly. And then as you go towards the base, tests are less costly, but they deliver less valuable because they rely more on your internals. You're not really testing from a user perspective. So that's how you go from like the base unit tests to the top end-to-end tests.
Agreed. So what I'm curious about, you're writing a book called Testing JavaScript Applications. This is still in the early access phase, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's currently on Manning's early access program. I think we have 12 chapters there. And we are now talking about whether we should go for the 13th because essentially I've already gone over the limit of pages we have talked through. So we're still checking whether that's going to happen. But almost everything is there already.
Wouldn't that be bad luck to end on chapter 13, though?
Sorry?
Wouldn't that be bad luck to end on chapter 13?
Oh, well, it depends on how superstitious you are. I'm not superstitious at all. So I wouldn't mind. I would actually love to try that chapter.
Okay.
So what I want to talk a little bit about, because one thing we've had people on the show that have books. We haven't really talked much about the book process. And so I'm actually kind of curious to take us a little in that direction. So how many years of experience did you say you have?
So right now I've been working since I was 18. So I'm probably on the professional side at like 7 years, something like that.
Okay. And how did you get to the point of deciding to write a book, especially on something that it feels like, there's a lot of books on JavaScript out there. I mean, it's very popular book topic. So like, how did you get to the point of knowing that writing a book was something you even wanted to do and like getting in touch with these people and picking this topic and making it unique?
I'm going to guess it's not because you were going to get rich from what I've heard about people writing tech books.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Well, I'm a very avid reader. Like I read a lot. Like I love reading and I've always wanted to write a book. So I thought, well, why not start with something I know a lot about, because writing a novel is too hard. Writing a technical book is hard, but it's not as hard. And it's also a topic I love so much that I thought it was going to be like a nice achievement to write a book. So I'm doing mostly for personal, like as a personal thing. I love reading and I love writing. So that's why I decided to write a book. And I think that the reason I've chosen JavaScript testing is because I found it easy to find material like scattered online. So there's like lots of blog posts, like you can easily find lots of videos, but I thought it was hard to find good long form material that had all this knowledge condensed into like one single piece of content, So when I was researching for books, I've seen there's like books about, how to test Vue.js, how to test React applications, or, how to write like tests with Cypress or I don't know if there's a book about Cypress specifically, but like how to write like tests with Selenium and that kind of stuff. But I didn't find a book which touches all the subjects I touch in my book, which are like going from the very theory of like what's the testing pyramid, what are the different kinds of tests, to how they deliver value, and then from that theory to practice of like, okay, now that we know how tests deliver value, how do we go about writing those tests and integrating them into our development process? So that's why I've decided to write about JavaScript testing specifically.
So I want to get into that. But I want to back up a little bit first. So were you like searching out different publishers that might want this book? Or did somebody contact you from your speaking engagements? How did that relationship with Manning get started?
Right. So I went to an event in Serbia called Armada.js, which, by the way, was brilliant, organized by my friend Marco. So I went there and I was speaking to a friend of mine called Stefan, really great guy. And I was telling him about, my desire to write a book that, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And he knew like an acquisitions editor at Manning. And basically he introduced me to them. And we went from there to like writing a proposal and then like talking to, who would the minimum qualified reader be, and, the whole market. And from there onwards, I got connected with my development editor, Helen, which is also brilliant. And yeah, then I started writing.
So what is a minimum qualified reader?
That's an excellent question. So a minimum qualified reader is the person you write for, because when you're writing, it's very difficult to write good content without knowing what you can and you can't assume about what your readers know. So defining a minimum qualified reader consists of thinking about, okay, what does my average reader know? So does my average reader know how to write code professionally? Do they know about JavaScript, about promises and about other advanced subjects within JavaScript? What can I assume and what can't I assume, and explaining things.
Okay. So what did you decide your minimum qualified reader was for this book?
Right. So my minimum qualified reader for testing JavaScript applications are junior developers who can already write code professionally. They've got a first job. They can deliver tasks. They require some assistance, but they can essentially write JavaScript code and they understand the basics of how JavaScript works. So those people, they're my minimum qualified readers.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about what is it? This is one I really honestly don't know anymore. What are the basics of JavaScript these days? Because it's like, everybody's talking about React. Everyone's talking about Vue. Are those basics of JavaScript? What is that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say those are basics of JavaScript. I think so. The knowledge I assume from my readers are they must know the basics about promises. Like, for example, they know how to use promises. They don't need to know anything about how the designs of promises or how to use them properly. They need to know okay, this is how the event loop works. I have an idea of how promises work. So they can use promises. They know the standard library, very well. They know what functions they can call on arrays. They know how to use map, the reduce, just JavaScript, native APIs. I'd say they can attach elements to the DOM. They can update the DOM using JavaScript. I think that's the basics. I wouldn't say knowing anything about React and Vue are basics, also because since those are libraries that not everyone uses, maybe you use React but not Vue, or maybe you use Vue and not React, I wouldn't include those as basics. And that's why on my chapter about testing React applications, I explain, okay, this is what happens when you try to run JSX in the browser, So I try to go through that process step by step so the readers know, okay, so if this is how it works on the browser, this is how it's going to work on Node.js when you're going to test it.
Okay, so you consider basics of JavaScript knowing both Node and DOM.
Yeah, I wouldn't say knowing much about Node because I don't use anything that's Node specific. As long as you know JavaScript itself, the syntax, how promises work and that kind of stuff, and the DOM, I would say that's enough because I don't use anything really that's Node specific that you can't do in the browser. Very, very few things that are hidden by the modules I use. Like, for example, if I'm dealing with web server on my book, I use Koa. So that's kind of like hidden away because of the library you're using. So there's nothing really that specific about being able to use Node itself.
Well, because when I think of JavaScript unit tests, I think of Node because that's where you can actually just use JavaScript. Whereas if you're in the browser, you have to have lots of other layers on top in order, because you only have console.log in the browser. And then like, how do you even get JavaScript to load in the browser? You have to have like a Webpack and
that's a very interesting point. So the thing is, because all your tests run in Node, but I would say that like when I assume that my readers know JavaScript, like knowing JavaScript is enough for them to do what they need on the testing side, because I think the only thing that's really Node specific that you need to know is how to like install a module and how to like run tests. So that's the only thing that's more like Node specific. And another interesting thing is, how do you go about running tests in the browser? Because in the past, I wouldn't say in the past because there's many people that still use Mocha and it's a brilliant library. Like you can run like Mocha in the browser. Like if you go to Chai's website, I think there's a page there which runs all of Chai's tests on your browser. And we even used to run tests for Chai itself on many different browsers using Karma. So it's just for Jest that we are mandated to run tests on Node. I think it's also important to make that distinction because like I think your tests are kind of different from the environment you run them in. It just happens that Jest can only run in Node, and therefore, you need to have you need to know how to manage modules and how to do the basics of like using npm. But those are all things that I go through in the book. So I don't go through them in detail, but I do teach you everything you need to know step by step so that you can get tests running.
So here we still have another question. Like, are you teaching how to use, like you've got these browser specific or ambi, I don't know, like multi-platform test frameworks? Like when you teach testing, are you teaching the frameworks or are you teaching like more underlying principles? How would somebody run a test in a browser?
So in my book, I start with first explaining the value of tests. And then I talk about like the practices around organizing your test suite, how you go about thinking, what is the formula I need to follow for every test? Because, for every test, there's like a minimum formula you can follow, which is arrange, act, and assert. That's the 3 A's pattern. So if you follow that pattern for all of your tests, you can write tests in whichever frameworks you're using, right? So you first arrange.
Say that again. The 3 A's pattern is what? Arrange,
act, and assert.
Arrange,
so
act,
the 3 A's pattern consists of arrange, act, and assert. And if you have that pattern on your test, you can write tests in whichever framework you're using. So you first arrange a scenario, then you act, and then you check the results of the actions you've done. So with that pattern, you can write any test you want. And because I teach you the fundamentals of that, like how to organize your tests, how to like do proper assertions, how to follow the 3 A's pattern, how to think about tests, you can easily bring that to your framework of choice. And in JavaScript, it becomes even easier because of how similar Jest is to Mocha. So it's very, very easy to, if you want to use Mocha or if you want to use Tape or whatever testing framework we want to use, I think there's many things you can bring from the book to all these other frameworks. And even if you're writing tests in other languages, there's many parts that will still apply. Like, for example, how to write good assertions, how to organize your tests, how small they should be, when should you do multiple assertions, on what you should assert, all that kind of stuff. So the first part of the book covers those fundamentals, like the values of tests and the fundamentals, and then the rest of the book is more practical. And in the end, I talk a bit more about business value and how to integrate tests, for example, in a CI/CD pipeline and that kind of thing that's more business focused.
So when you say more practical, what does that mean to you?
So that means like writing an application with the reader and showing them how we would go about testing it. So, for example, writing a basic web server and showing them this is how I would test this program. So it's very hands-on. It's a very hands-on approach. So in the middle of the book, you have all those examples, all the code is on GitHub. It's very practical. So you can read those chapters and the next day you can apply that at work. So that's what I mean by practical.
Okay, cool. So could you give us the title of each of the chapters, the draft titles? Would that be okay?
Yeah, that would be absolutely okay. I don't remember all of them by heart. I might need to cheat and go to Manning's website because it's 13. I just want to make sure I'll get the order right as well.
Take a second to do that. We'll just edit out the pause.
Okay, cool. I got it here. So testing JavaScript application has 3 parts. So at the moment, it starts with an introduction to automated testing, then explains what to test and when. The 3rd chapter covers testing techniques. The 4th teaches you how to test backend applications. The 5th teaches you advanced backend testing techniques. The 6th covers testing front-end applications. 7th talks about testing in the React ecosystem. 8 talks about how to test React applications. 9 covers test-driven development. The 10th chapter is about UI-based end-to-end testing, so Cypress, Selenium, that kind of test. The 11th chapter covers how to write those kinds of tests, writing UI-based end-to-end tests. The 12th chapter covers integration, continuous integration and continuous delivery. And the 13th is called A Culture of Quality. And in it, I talk a bit about other techniques and tools which you can use to amplify the benefits of your tests. Like, for example, types, like, for example, linters, formatters, and that kind of tool.
So I noticed that you've got 2 chapters on testing React versus other frameworks, Vue, Angular, Svelte, you name it. So I'm just curious, is that because you're more familiar with React, or do basically the principles of testing with specific frameworks carry over to some of the other frameworks other than React?
I think some of the principles do carry over. So the reason I've chosen React is because I think that's what most of my readers would be using in their day-to-day job. And I think that because I am very experienced with React, it makes it very easy to explain what's happening behind the scenes so that people actually understand how the testing environment is set up. And then I think if you can step back and, before you write your test, understand what your tool is doing behind the scenes, how Babel is working, everything that's involved in actually getting the environment to work, I think you can apply similar steps to other frameworks and tools so that you can write tests for whichever frameworks and tools you're using. So I think it's both because of popularity and because it's one of the, I think, best ones to explain given my experience.
Oh, I'm just discovering it looks like, is the entire book online? Like anybody can look at the entire book right now in the draft preview state?
Yeah, so I think the way Manning works is you can go there, and as you scroll, I think you have a limit of pages you can scroll for free, something like that. So I think you can jump to chapters and read that, and once you've read the limit number of pages, I think you will like start to not be able to scroll through anymore.
You got to open up a new incognito window.
Sorry?
I was being facetious. I said, you got to open up a new incognito window, because oftentimes when I hit a paywall on things like that, where I'm like trying to read something and then it hits me with a paywall, I close the incognito window and then open up a new incognito window and then just continue reading.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, I think, by the way, I don't know exactly how the live reading works. So I think that would be good asking Manny, because I don't want to like speak for them, because I don't know how it works, because like that's more like on their business side. So.
Yeah, anyway, I just, it's cool. You definitely, whatever the rule is, you definitely can preview a ton of content, because I've just been clicking around here and just scrolling, and I can see like diagrams and the code snippets, and the code snippets have like a thing you can copy. What's the format for this? Like, how were you able to create these? Well, how were you able to create the diagrams and the code snippets?
Mm-hmm. So the diagrams, I've been using a tool called draw.io. I really like it because it produces like XMLs, so I can, edit everything. It's just like SVGs, and it's super easy to export and import things into it. It's super good. And for the whole text and snippets, I've been using them. So I just write it all in plain text, and then I just generate the actual PDF manuscript using ASCII doc. So it's been a great process. Like, I'm very happy I've chosen to write it all in plain text. It's saved me so much time, because I can just copy, like easily write scripts to number images, to import and export images, to copy snippets into my GitHub repo. So there's a lot of automation going on, and it's just very pleasant to write with them. Yeah.
And it's amazing.
How
does ASCII doc compare to like Markdown or
Right.
other...
So they're very similar. They're very similar. The syntax is very similar. I would say that the difference between ASCII doc and Markdown is that Markdown is usually meant for you to write single like blog posts, like documents that don't necessarily like have correlation to each other. Like, of course, you can do that. You can, I don't know, like add like header attributes. Like, there's many things you could do. But ASCII doc is a tool that was designed for you to write like long form content. So if I want to write a book, I can easily have multiple ASCII doc files and I can easily build them all into a single piece of content. So I think that's the main difference between ASCII doc and Markdown, is what they were designed for. And Markdown, because of its intent, it deals a bit differently with snippets and images. So it has like some special formats for different kinds of callouts. You can easily style things using CSS. So like if you're writing a book, that's excellent because it allows you to easily diagram things, like easily format things, and alter their positions on pages and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd say the main difference is Markdown is more for like to write a single document, and you'd use ASCII doc to write an entire like book or long form content.
Okay, cool. I'll have to look into ASCII doc. That might be something good for me. Did you find it to be very pleasurable? Well, you said you found it to be very pleasurable to use because it's just plain text.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of plain text. Like if I can do something plain text, I'll do it in plain text.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you do plain text and then it's kind of weird because it's the opposite of what people say. But what you see is what you get with plain text. you know exactly what it's going to be. You know how to edit it. But with WYSIWYGs, with the quote, what you see is what you get editors, you never know what it's going to look like when it actually like goes to a different format, because you just see it in like the plain HTML version. But then when you put it on the page, and it gets murdered.
Exactly. And like, one of the things that I've done that just proved how good my choice was when I had to like divide chapters, because I had some chapters that were like quite long and I had to split them. And when you split chapters, you essentially have to change the numbers of all your figures, change their positions and all of that. Uh-huh. So when I had to do that split, instead of me going through all the figures that I had, renaming them, manually moving things in like to different folders, all that kind of stuff, all I've done was separate chapters, create a script which just read each figure call out on each chapter and automatically assign new numbers to them and renamed the old files. And that took me like 10 minutes to do like all chapters instead of taking like hours, So that's cool. It paid off.
And then these code blocks online, they have like, you can copy and stuff. By the way, I did hit the limit. So now it's applying a ROT 13 to all the text. All the text is now it looks like gibberish. So it's all there. And all the code, anything that's in a code block is correct. But all of the words that were English have now become gibberish. Right. But when you do a code block, was there anything special that you had to do for like the note sections or the copy section or any of this stuff? Or is it just you create a code block section in ASCII doc, and then the way that Manning renders it gets a copy button because it knows it's a code block? How does that work?
Yeah, so I do have to specify what kind of syntax I'm using, and just like denoted that it's a code block using, I think it's 4 dots. So as long as I do that, I put a file name, the type of code I'm writing so that it can like syntax highlight and just like write the code block. The only thing I had done was I've written a small script which validates the syntax of my snippets to make sure there's no typos, but that was mostly it. There's nothing special about.
So Prettier doesn't run on ASCII doc yet, huh?
No, it doesn't. But that's a very good suggestion. I might incorporate that.
Yeah, I'd love that. Also, is there a way you could give us a gist of that snippet that you used for ASCII doc for anybody that, I mean, like I would use this. I'm seeing what you did here, and we started the show about testing, and hopefully nobody's upset. I've gone so much into the book, but I actually find the process that you went through to write the book, the thinking process, how you align, the knowledge and all that. I'm finding this to be very fascinating because this is something that I don't think we've actually talked about before on the show.
Yeah,
and I would love. I would love to
I'm
get
actually
your
writing a
snippet.
blog post. I started writing a blog post last weekend about my process of writing the book. And in it, I'm going to like place some of my snippets, explain a few of the things I had done to make it more pleasant to write. I can probably like get a few snippets here.
Yeah. Do you know where that's going to be published? Is that on your like personal blog that you could just give us a link to and I could check that out next week?
So that's going to be on my personal blog. It's probably not going to be out next week, but it's definitely going to be out by the end of the month.
Okay.
Because I'm
Cool.
going on holidays in the start of December and I want to get it done by then.
Go ahead and give us a link to that. What is it?
So my blog is lucasfcosta.com. So let me copy the link and send it to you. So it is here. So yeah, by the end of November, I'll have a blog post there with the whole process, a few of my snippets, how ASCII doc compares to Markdown, all that kind of stuff.
Oh man, I'm really interested to check that out. Because I've been needing something a little more powerful. Oh, sorry. What'd you say?
I was really looking forward to writing this since, I've reached half of the book. I thought, ASCII doc is just amazing. I should just write about this.
Oh yeah. Cause I've really been needing something more powerful than Markdown. And I was doing some stuff in Google Docs and then that wasn't working out for me because that was just a terrible experience. And then Dropbox Paper has actually been working really good, but it's just got a few quirks. And so ASCII doc might be the thing that I'm looking for. So I'm super glad that we're having this conversation. And I'm thinking maybe we should get back a little bit to the testing topic. You had a couple other points here. Actually, one, I don't know if this was testing related or not, but you've got one of the talking points you gave to us was about Vim and CLI tools. Tell me about that. I mean, I'm a Vim user, so I want to hear what what do I need to know as a Vim user about testing in JavaScript?
Right. So as a Vim user, I don't think there's anything that's really that Vim specific. I think that, as long as you have your editor configured to match your like individual preferences and that it can like syntax highlights and, as long as you have access to, code completion and that kind of stuff, I think you should be fine. One of the things that I think helps a lot in terms of correctness in general, not necessarily about tests, is having code of completion set up if you're using Vim or, I don't know, I think IntelliJ IDEs call it like IntelliSense and that kind of stuff for their like type detection and smart suggestions thing. So all of that is super useful when I'm writing code. Like many times I'll just press like Shift K and then activate like the tooltips from code of completion to see the types of the types of function returns or what are the arguments it takes and just like make sure that, all the types match everywhere. And as long as you know how to constrain your application state using types properly, it helps a lot. So if you are using TypeScript very strictly, then usually if it compiles, it will mostly work. I mean, it's not like Haskell, you have to understand that not like Haskell or Rust, but it's definitely very, very helpful to have that in terms of correctness.
Yeah, I'm looking at your blog article that you put in the show notes, and I guess I'll link that here too. Mm-hmm. But it looks like this is fairly easy to read as someone who's used Vim. I'm not new to Vim by any means. I've used it for years, but I have not become an expert in terms of like the config and stuff. And I'm just kind of looking through you talking about your plugins that you use and stuff like that. So, none of this is particularly related to testing. I thought maybe there was like some plugin that every time you hit save will automatically run tests or something like that.
Right. No. So I leverage like other tools for that. So because I work mostly on my terminal, like I'm 99% of the time in my terminal, what I do is I usually just have like no daemon running my tests whenever I save my files. And then I use Tmux so that I can easily have multiple panes. And then whenever I save a file, like on the pane on the left, it will run my tests on a small pane on the right. And then I can just like easily like make one of those full screen and then jump back and forth between, the test output and Vim. So that helps me a lot in terms of workflow, but it doesn't make a difference in the actual code I write, but that's super helpful. For running tests, being able to see the results of your tests as you write them and, just have them quickly running whenever you save files, it's super useful. So for that, Tmux helps you split windows into multiple panes. And then I just use NoDaemon to keep my tests running. I am not really a big fan of Jest Watch. I prefer to use NoDaemon. So that's what I usually do.
Have you ever wondered if you could be offering a faster, less buggy experience for your customers? I mean, let's face it, the only way you're going to know that is by actually running it on production. So go figure it out, right? You run it on production, but you need something plugged in so that you can find out where those issues are, where it's slowing down, where it's having bugs. You need something like that there. And Raygun is awesome at this. They just added the performance monitoring, which is really slick, and it works like a breeze. I love it. I love it. It's like you get the ray gun and you zap the bugs. Anyway, definitely go check it out. It's going to save you a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of sanity. I mean, let's face it. Grepping through logs is no fun, and having people not able to tell you that it's too slow because they got sidetracked into Twitter is also not fun. So go check out Raygun. They are definitely going to help you out. There are thousands of customer-centric, customer-focused software companies who use Raygun every day to deliver great experiences for their customers. And if you go to Raygun and you use our link, you can get a 14-day free trial. So you can go check that out at javascriptjabber.com/Raygun.
So now not everybody, but yeah, just about everybody I know that is big on the terminal, except for me, uses tmux. And I use iTerm. So I just make windows. If I need 3 different windows, I just make 3 new iTerm windows. And I've never really gotten on the tmux bus. But sell me on tmux. Like, why should I use tmux rather than just have open 3 iTerm windows?
Right. So I think I used to use iTerm. It was very slow for me. And then I moved on to Kitty, which was way, way faster. And now I'm using Alacrity. I just if I were using iTerm and, any specific configurations on iTerm, I wouldn't be able to port them as easily to other programs. So I think one of the things is portability. So if you're using tmux, wherever you're using tmux is just tmux and it's your configuration. So it's very portable. And yeah, because it works anywhere, you can just switch terminal emulators very easily. So I'd say that's the main reason to use tmux. And also because I'm so familiar with the shortcuts, because I've been using it for so long, that I just think it's not worth switching now, because I have all my plugins there. My configuration, it has all the things I like in it. So I didn't see any reason not to use tmux.
I guess I don't even know why you would use it in the first, because I thought what tmux was just allows you to have different windows open. So like you said, you can see your testing is open in one window. You can see your editors open in another window. So you edit some file, you save, and then you immediately can see your tests running, which I think that's a big benefit. I'm just saying, for me, I've never had a problem with iTerm being slow, but I don't load any plugins for it. In fact, the only thing that I knew that you could do as far as a quote unquote plugin is a color scheme. So I'm not even sure what it is that somebody does with something like tmux.
Yeah.
That is what is it that you have all this configuration for that it does that you find useful, or that you're oh, I got to have tmux.
So I have a few plugins to control Spotify from tmux. So I can just just do things there. I have my bottom status bar looks.
Could you make it play a bad song when tests fail?
Well, that's it. Well, you definitely could, because it's just Apple script, but then it's not. It doesn't happen on tmux, but it's not a bad idea. But also, another thing I like about tmux is that it's not bound to any GUI, GUI specific elements. So you can just close iTerm or close whatever terminal emulator you're using, and then your sessions are still there, so you can attach and detach them from them. I don't know if you can do that in iTerm. I think on iTerm, if you have a window and you close it, it's gone. But in tmux, you can just attach and detach to sessions, and they're just going to be there unless you actually kill them. So that's also not a brilliant part of tmux that I don't think you can have on iTerm, for example.
Well, iTerm has tmux integration for that, but I see iTerm and tmux as completely different realms of thing, because you can use tmux with iTerm, you can use tmux with terminal.apps, you can use tmux with Alacrity, you can use tmux with anything. Likewise, you can use Screen with anything. I think there's one other terminal mux manager or whatever people use. Anyway, I was just kind of curious about that, because I saw that in the list. So okay, yeah, that makes sense. There's one other thing in the material that you had here that I was curious about. Why flat earthers are bad at QA.
Right. That's an excellent question. So that was the title of my talk last year at Holy JS in Moscow, which is a brilliant conference, by the way. So essentially, I was comparing tests and types to like mathematics and physics, like how, you can know things in advance using types, like with static analysis, and you don't actually have to run experiments as you would have to do, like, for example, if you're an experimental physicist, right? So that was the title of my talk last year at Holy JS Moscow, which is a brilliant conference, by the way. So in that talk, I'm essentially explaining why you need to have to be good at scientific thinking, to be good at testing. Types, tests, and why flat earthers are bad at QA, right? That was the title of my talk last year at Holy JS. And in it, essentially, I take an epistemological approach to explaining tests.
What does epistemological mean?
So, right. So that's, so it
sounds like something I do with my bishop.
Right. No, so it's essentially, we're trying to answer the question, how do we know what we know, right? How do we know what we know about our programs? So that's essentially the question we're trying to answer. So with that question in mind, I talk about types and tests and talk about how they complement each other. So I try to explain how you can get benefits from using types to complement your tests. And I also explain what the scientific method can teach us about correctness, because I think it has a lot to do with how types and tests complement each other. So my whole idea in the talk is to say that tests are like experiments. So basically we execute parts of our programs, parts of our code, and we observe its behavior. So if you have a certain function, you're going to pass it, a few inputs, and you're going to check if the outputs are correct, right? And then we extrapolate and we say that if for those inputs, the output was correct, well, it will be correct for a wider universe of inputs. And then types, they're different from tests, which types are different from tests because while tests are like experiments, types are more like proofs. So you can use a strict system of rules to prove properties about your programs before they even run, right? So while tests use a small subset of experiments to prove things about your programs, types just prove general properties about your programs. Because, if you tell that a certain variable can only have, 3 different values, well, if you ever try to assign a value that's not one of those, your program will not pass static analysis. But in your test, if you haven't checked for one of those, maybe it will pass for 2 of the values, but not pass for the third. So the only way you can really prove your programs are correct is with types, not with tests. But you can use types to reduce the possible universe of inputs you can give to your functions. And then you can test those inputs, right? So then you can have more confidence in the programs you write.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
Was that an explanation that was too long-winded? I'm a bit concerned I might have.
The whole thing is we just ramble on this show. I mean, you don't have to worry that much about that sort of thing because people are listening because they got nothing else to do. They're like sitting on a train for an hour or something. I don't know.
It's all good. That's like AJ said. That's what we're here for, is to go on these different...
Okay, cool.
That's our tagline. Listen to us when you have nothing else to do.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but I would highly recommend people to have a look at the talk because it's a 1 hour talk. It's fairly long and it has some quite good insights that are very hard to condense in a few minutes.
All right. Well, I think that sounds good. We're closing up on time here. There's maybe 2 other things I wanted to bring up, but first I wanted to give Steve and Amy a chance to, you guys haven't piped in. I've been stealing the show.
I had to disappear for a little bit, so I'm coming in mid and don't have questions. All the questions I tried to ask at the beginning, but
yeah, I think we answered everything fair. There's some other specifics I wanted to get into, but that's fine. I thought it was interesting to talk about writing the book. I know I've been a technical editor on a book in the past, so I was a little bit privy to the process. But from my conversations or listening to people that have authored books, I say kudos because it's a big undertaking, and I think you're probably doing it more to help other people and because you enjoy it than for the money. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love writing, and what got me into writing was really all the reading that I had been doing recently. And I remember when I wanted to get into writing, I emailed a guy that used to write for The New Yorker. So I love the magazine, and I thought, oh, this guy writes really well. I'm gonna just write him an email and ask him to teach me how to write. And I didn't expect to get a response, to be honest. But then I got a response quite quickly with lots of good recommendations on books, and just tips on how to write well, and that was super super helpful. And since that day, it just like completely changed the way I approach writing and teaching things to people. I think after that day, I just became so much better at explaining things that I can't thank him enough.
Awesome. That's really cool. I think that's a good thing for people to know, to just, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And a lot of people will reach out and respond back with, yeah, I'd love to help. There was three other things that I had notes on here. One, in the book, this is going back to the book. It looks like the way that you've structured the chapters here is that you've got like introduction, learn, exercise, and then you kind of repeat that pattern. Do you find that, I guess you find that to be the most effective? Or let me rephrase my question here. One of the things I've struggled with when I'm looking at like how to teach somebody something is there's always this bootstrap knowledge that if you don't have this base foundation that's usually broader, then you can't do any exercises and you can't learn any of the other things, because you have interconnected terms where one term relies on another term. If you don't know both terms, you can't go forward, but you can't explain the terms independently because they rely on one another. Like you couldn't talk about Congress without talking about the Senate, because the two have to go together in order to understand the way the government functions in the United States, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the layout of your book, how did you structure materials so that you are able to break things down, able to do exercises, and able to do deep dives? Like what was the ordering decision around that?
Mm-hmm. So the first part of the book is really about foundational concepts. So in that part of the book, I talk a lot about the testing pyramid and different kinds of tests and how to approach how to decide which kinds of tests write and when. So once I've covered that, the next chapters are all about applying those decisions to different kinds of projects and what to take into account on those different kinds of projects. So that's the main intention of structuring it this way, so that you can first understand what the concepts are and then apply them to different kinds of projects. And then once you have applied that to different kinds of projects, go a bit deeper into TDD, into tools like Cypress, and like explain a bit about continuous integration and continuous delivery and the role of tests in those practices.
Okay, cool. And then also two other things. You said you were an intern. As a QA intern is how you got your start in the software industry. And then you went on from that to build Chai and Sinon, which are pretty big projects.
Yeah, so I didn't start Chai and Sinon. I jumped in after they had been written, and I did plenty of contributions to the point where I became a core maintainer. So the credit of creating that goes to the original authors for sure. Even though I've done quite a lot of contributions there. But yeah, I've got started in the tech industry as a QA intern. So I was doing a lot of manual testing at the time, and I was quite frustrated with having to do repetitive actions. I just thought it wasn't that fun, and I thought machines could do it way better than I could. So that's how I started getting to automated testing. It was from a different perspective. I wasn't writing any code. I was just writing code to test the code that others were writing. So I was not writing application code, just the tests themselves. And I got to the point where I had automated a lot of the stuff I did. So I barely had to do manual testing anymore. And then I ended up becoming a software developer. And because I was concerned with not having to do these repetitive actions, I just brought that with me when I became a developer. And another important thing, I think, is also that when developers write good tests and when they build quality into the code they write, when quality is built in, not bolt on, I think it enables QA professionals to do a more proactive job of finding bugs and finding, failures in general. Because, if you have the confidence that your application is not going to break because of trivial actions, then QA can be a lot more exploratory. They can give you way better feedback about many other different aspects of your application.
Yeah, I definitely think that automating problems for yourself it's a great way just to learn programming, period. If you've got a clear vision of what the problem is and a clear vision of the solution that you personally want as an outcome, it makes it a lot easier to understand the concepts that you're encountering. And it sounds like a QA position is just a really good start to get like patterns and principles down, because you have to do that in order to have reproducible results.
Yeah, absolutely. And even before this, I was also a big fan of automation. I remember my first experience, my first contact with programming was when I was writing bots to play online RPGs for me. That was the first time I've ever written a line of code, because at the time I was playing an MMORPG that was quite popular in Brazil called Ragnarok Online. And, all my friends liked, killing monsters and, doing all these things in the game. But what I really liked was writing codes for bots to do things for me. I thought that was way more interesting. So I was just writing Perl, learning about regular expressions and, all that kind of stuff. So it was really fun. And from there on, I just fell in love with programming, and I was just, really big into automating, manual stuff.
So we've got an ongoing debate on the show. I just want you to back me up here. Regular expressions are a critical and important part of being a software developer, right?
What? Yeah, 100% agree. I couldn't agree more. Regular expressions has saved my life so many times. Probably
take that, other hosts. Take that.
Regular expressions have cost me so much time in the past for no purpose. So
regular expressions are just amazing. The XKCD comic that has the characters just saying, I love thinking about how the things I learn are one day, going to save the world. Oh, that's such an amazing comic. Let me send you the link, because I definitely think you should include that in the show notes for this. Sorry, I'm just getting the link here. But yeah, regular expressions are absolutely fantastic. I just, I love them. When I was writing my book, I was using regular expressions all the time to, just parse my snippets, get the things I wanted out of the manuscript. And regular expressions are just awesome. I can't talk enough. I can't emphasize how much I love it. Yeah, can't emphasize enough.
Good. That's what I like to hear. Somebody who can speak truth and reason instead of cowering in their own ignorance, Steve.
Well, I haven't heard that yet. I'm kidding.
No, yeah,
regular expressions. Cruel.
It's personal, sounds like.
Yeah, it's personal. And to all the other thousands of you that are listening that don't know regular expressions. Yeah.
There's only
regular expressions
now.
But I think they're important. I mean, they're just, I know you can get them wrong. I'm just saying they're a tool in the toolbox that, gosh, makes something so easy. Because sometimes you don't need a full-blown parser. Sometimes a regular expression will do the job. And that's a lot of times for me.
No, I think once you know how to write regular expressions, you will find more use cases for them. I think the real problem with regular expressions is that their syntax is not verbose at all. So there's a lot of meaning in like a single symbol. So it's very hard to understand, what a certain regular expression does if you're not initiated. Let's put it like that. But
I feel the same way about TypeScript.
Right. I'm not sure I agree. I think TypeScript I quite like the syntax. Sometimes it can be a bit cryptic, but I think like regular expressions have so much, like they have so much more meaning in so fewer characters that I think it's just so much more difficult.
All right. Well, this gives me some fodder for picks. And I think, sorry, my fault. I let us meander a little bit, but I like to meander a little bit and go through, these different topics and stuff. So we started with testing and ended up on regular expressions. But I think it's been a good show. Do you have anything else that you feel like you want to make sure people know before we wrap things up?
Yeah. There's one thing I think people should know. I think it's that Vim is by far the best text editor that exists. So yeah, I think that's something that's important to say.
But why? Okay, but you got to qualify it. Why use Vim over VS Code or the more powerful editor Emacs?
So you're into Emacs? Oh, well,
I'm channeling Chuck.
I cannot. Sorry.
I said I'm just channeling Chuck. He's the one that runs the show. He's an Emacs guy sometimes.
So I think I don't have anything against Emacs. I haven't used it that much. I have friends who love it. I think people should use whatever they feel comfortable. But I just love Vim so much that I just want to make everyone use Vim. Whenever possible, because it's just like it makes things so much easier. Like you're writing the command line, you already have all these tools which are like so easily extensible, and everything just flows so easily. Like there's no proprietary interfaces that you need to, to deal with. Everything just works because it's just like it just relies on plain text and just fundamental concepts, and it's just so easy to extend tools. So easy to extend your workflow. You don't have to leave the terminal for anything. It just makes the whole, like your whole workflow more pleasant. And yeah, I just love Vim. Like I love Vim so much. I've got like :W tattooed on my ankle. Like I just love it.
Did you say you have a tattoo? What?
Yeah, I have the write command on Vim. So yeah, I have it tattooed on me. That's how much
good.
I like Vim.
That's good. That's good.
I just love it.
Maybe taking it a little too far, but too much is just enough. That's what I always say. All right. And then how do people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about testing or book writing or Vim?
Yeah. So yeah, people can get in touch with me on Twitter at @thewizardlucas on Twitter. They can also find me on GitHub at Lucas F. Costa, and they can also find some other links on my blog at lucasfcosta.com. If they want, they can send me an email at javascriptjabber@lucasfcosta.com. So any emails that you send there will be automatically tagged. I promise I'll respond. I might take a while, but I'll try to respond to everyone. And yeah, that's it.
All right. It's 2020. Don't make promises.
Right. But, we're almost at the end of it, so should be fine.
Maybe that somebody discovered time travel.
Fourth quarter.
That was in the news recently. So maybe 2020 is not ending after all. Maybe we're all going to get transported back. With that,
hopefully.
Though, should we move on to picks? What did you say, Amy?
I said, what did I say? Oh, I said we're in the fourth quarter. It's going to get interesting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll see what happens tomorrow when we all wake up, if the world's still here. So for those of you listening to the show, today is U.S. Election Day, November 3rd. So the riots start, the toilet paper stops, and the boards go up.
Toilet paper stops.
We stocked up. We've got our 6 month supply. So if there's no more toilet paper for 3 months again, we're going to be all right, at least here. But don't come to my house asking for any, because we're keeping it for us. You got to protect your own in these trying times.
Hey folks, this is Charles Max Wood, and I just launched my book, The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job. It's up on Amazon. We self-published it. I would love your support. If you want to go check it out, you can find it there. The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job. Have a good one. Max out.
So anyway, let's get into picks. Who would like to go first?
I can go.
All right, Amy, you go.
Okay. I'm going to say, based on what we just said, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I think that no matter what happens today, people need to be loving and kind to each other. And that's going to be that. And I'm going to pick a JavaScript thing here now. I feel like we need a framework, like we need a big framework fan on the show, because I feel like we're all turning into like big vanilla JavaScript fans. So it's because
we're more wise with our gray hairs of wisdom.
So this is a GitHub repository, and the guy went through and basically, let's see, looks like he did a lot of different patterns in vanilla JavaScript that are like popular in different frameworks. And if I star so much stuff on GitHub, sometimes I forget what I've starred. But if I remember correctly, this one also does he kind of goes through the performance of it. It's the README is pretty big, so I might be mistaken on that part. But I'll drop a link either way. Anything that I star, I try not to just star stuff willy-nilly. I actually star stuff that's interesting. So hopefully this is good. This is a case study on viable techniques for vanilla web development. So that is going to be my pick. And be kind to each other, please. Please, please, please.
I will not throw a Molotov cocktail at anyone, even people that I disagree with.
Thank you.
That's so big of you.
Same thing on like a super serious note. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. This is my own personal belief, is that most people, if they're, acting in a way that you disagree with, I feel like a lot of times people act in certain ways out of pain. So try to understand the people's pain that they're going through, and, do what you can to be a good person to them. So that's it.
Alrighty. I'll go next, just because I normally go last, and I'll break it up. So I'm going to pick, I need to find the right link for this. there's a tool called RDM, and I don't know what that's supposed to stand for, but basically if you're on Mac and you want to turn any display into a Retina display, you can get Quartz Debug and put your Quartz in debug mode. Quartz is like the rendering engine for Mac OS for the graphics. Like you've got your terminal as your CLI, and then Quartz is your graphical interface. So I don't think anybody knows that it's called Quartz. But anyway, if you Google RDM, Quartz Debug, and high DPI or Retina, and I'll try to get the links for this so that I can actually put it in there. You can take like an old Thunderbolt display and turn that into a Retina display. You can take other high DPI displays that are not Apple branded or Apple certified. And yeah, you open up Quartz Debug, you go into the properties, you check a box that says enable high DPI, you do a reboot, you open up a RDM, but it's not the main one. It's like a fork of RDM that's maintained. And then you open that up and it shows a lightning bolt by every resolution that is a high DPI resolution. And then you can have a Retina display out of any screen. So that's pretty cool. I actually, in my list of things that I was going to pick today, I already had iTerm 2. So the thing about Alacrity that I cannot abide is that it does not have tabs. And the authors are a little bit cryptic about this. Not that they're intending to be cryptic, but what they're saying doesn't come across the way that they intend to their audience, which is that they're not going to add tabs into Alacrity because the window manager of an operating system is what manages tabs. And so there needs to be a pull request to enhance the support of the Mac OS window manager in order for Alacrity to be able to take advantage of the tab system that is already native to Mac OS. But anyway, I don't even know why I want that thing about Alacrity. Alacrity sounds cool, but iTerm 2 has GPU rendering and all the stuff that it seems like Alacrity has, and it's got a nice selection of color themes and stuff. In particular, the two features that I like about it are the color themes, which everything has color themes, but the color themes are easy to download and use. And then also the automatic profile switching. So I have it so that when my username is root, it switches into a really ugly profile. If no rules are matched, it switches into a different ugly profile. And then for my local username, it has a pretty profile. And then for my development system, it has a pretty profile. And then for my production system, it has another pretty profile. So as I'm SSHing into different machines, the color profile is automatically changing. And that does require setting a setting, but it's just you pull a thing from the drop-down menu of preferences to install iTerm 2 tools on whatever server you're on, and it installs them for that user. So I've got a cheat sheet for that, how to do the things that I just talked about at webinstall.dev/iTerm2, as well as you can install iTerm 2 for Mac from webinstall.dev. And then also Fish. I wasn't going to pick Fish. I think I might have picked it in the past already. I mean, I was going to pick it eventually. But Fish is a shell that is not like Bash. It's not Bash compatible, but it's very, very fast. And the problems that I've had with shells, we were talking earlier about things being slow. ZSH is slow. I mean, when you're using Oh My ZSH and it's loading all those plugins, I don't know why, but it's slow. Maybe it's because I've got 100,000 lines of history that it has to parse or something, because I've never actually cleared out my ZSH history as I've transferred it from one computer to the next. But Fish is really fast and it's really friendly and it has all this type ahead completion. And so I don't use it for scripting. I wouldn't recommend anybody use it for scripting because it's not Bash compatible. And you should use something like, you should be using Bash for writing scripts because that's what's Bash compatible. But I've learned a little bit of it, the way that it works. Variables almost work exactly the same. Exports work the same. Like many things work the same, but it's not intended to be Bash compatible. So that's just important to know. But it's just, I love it so much. I'm also going to pick, let's see, I think I'll save that for next week. I'm going to pick the Cloud Encabulator. So the Cloud Encabulator is this awesome new technology. It's Kubernetes enabled. It's got basically every buzzword you can think of. And it's just a great way to run your stuff in the cloud. So if you've got a system, you're going to be running stuff in the cloud and you haven't been looking at the Cloud Encabulator for optimizing your performance or simplifying your DevOps, definitely take a look at that. And I gave a link to the explanatory video where it just nails it right on the head as to why Cloud Encabulator is such a better framework than most of the other stuff that's out there. And with that concludes my picks. So we'll move on.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was taking a nap during your picks because you always take so long. But anyway, I'm awake again.
I'm glad you're getting that in, Steve. I know that you need those.
Yes.
Y'all are not listening to my advice earlier.
We love each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
On each other
yeah. So I just have one small pick today, and this is totally floof, nothing technical, pink sugar or whatever. It's I'm a child of the 80s, and so that music is, at least some of it, is near and dear to my heart. And so recently I came across a video for a group called The Midnight, and it's sort of a retro synthwave type band. So a lot of the synthesizer music that was real popular in the 80s, and that wasn't necessarily my type of music. But first time I heard this song, I really liked it. And then coupled that with that is somebody put that song to a video showing clips from a bunch of the really popular teen movies from the 80s. So if you're looking stuff like Real Genius and Weird Science and the all-time cult ultimate classic Better Off Dead and all the 16 Candles and you name it. So it's just a retro song with a bunch of really fun movie clips. And the name of the song is called Sunset by The Midnight. So I'll stick a link to that in the show notes.
Alrighty. And Lucas, we saved the best for last. You already picked Vim.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Right. So let me get my saved links here. Just 1 second. Pocket.com. Sorry, I was not sure I was going to be on this, so I didn't open my list of links, but I'm going to do that right now. Right. So I'm going to just quickly pick a few things here. Do you need it, would you like me to say anything related to the show we've just done, or can it just be any? Sorry.
Pick anything you want. Pick a favorite TV show, pick something technical. I'm not picking stuff that's directly related to the show. I just happened to, because there were some things that was on my mind anyway. But yeah, just, it could be a book, an author, an idea, anything. Just something that you think is good for the world.
Okay, cool. Right. So since we've talked a lot about writing today, I have 2 book recommendations that I think helped me a lot in writing my book. First one is, it's a book by Steven Pinker. It's called A Sense of Style. So that is an amazing book if you want to understand how people actually, parse the things you've written, and just if you want to know how to write better based on, linguistics and all the research that Pinker has done and others have done as well. So that's an amazing book. The other book I would recommend is William Zinsser's On Writing Well. It's also an amazing book about about nonfiction writing. Amazing book. I would highly recommend it. So those are the 2 books I would recommend in regards to writing. I am also currently reading an amazing book. So the third book I would recommend is Daniel Vacanti's Actionable Agile Metrics. So it's been an eye-opener for me, because many times we think there's things that are wrong with our processes, but we don't actually stop to think about why they're happening and to think about what actions we can take. And his book has lots of good advice and good research on what actually makes teams work well. So yeah, that's been really, really good. And in addition to that, I think my only other recommendation is to really use Vim. NeoVim, actually, these days. But yeah.
But why NeoVim? What feature does NeoVim have that Vim 8 doesn't have?
Right. That's a very good question. So one of the things that I like about NeoVim is I've been trying to write a few plugins recently, and it's just way easier to explore with NeoVim, like writing some Lua and that kind of stuff. So I've been playing around with that. I haven't done anything significant yet, but I'm just playing around and I'm quite liking it. Yeah. Also, I think running tests asynchronously also saves me quite a lot of time. In Vim, I used to have problems with Syntastic and those kinds of plugins where it would just do actions synchronously, and then my whole editor would freeze. So that's.
I just want to let you know that's not a thing anymore. We've got Vim 8. Now, nobody was using Vim 8, but Vim 8 has been out for 4 years. It's just none of the base systems like Mac was still using Vim 7 or something. So that's why I asked, because Vim actually, I think, has solved all the problems that people were complaining about a long time ago. It just took forever for the package managers to catch up.
Right. That makes sense. Well, I might as well just try Vim 8 then and go with the real thing.
I'll be interested to hear on your experience, because you might come back and say, no, NeoVim is better, but it's just everything I've heard about NeoVim. It sounds like it's from like old versions of Vim. Then people just kind of like kept with it because they got it when, Vim didn't have those features, and then they just stuck with it.
Yeah, I've moved to NeoVim because of the async actions, and then I stayed because I was playing with plugins. I was trying to make my every key I type make a piano sound. But yeah, it didn't go really well.
I can imagine that wouldn't go very well.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to get the sounds right.
Yeah, absolutely. That was exactly the problem I found. Yeah, I tried to, find ways around it, but, I don't really understand much about music. So,
well, and then holding down the key at the right time. So, like depending on how long you hold the key, it holds the note, that sort of stuff. Anyway, thanks for coming on the show, Lucas. It's great to have you. I was super excited to learn about this book stuff. I hope that was useful for other people, and we all get a chance to check out ASCII Doc. And yeah, I'll be interested to hear more about the book as you get closer to. Well, I guess it's pretty close to being finished publishing, but be interested to see it come out. And we really, really enjoyed having you on the show. Do we do anything else as we say goodbye, guys? I don't remember.
Nope, just bye.
Okay, then bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for the invite. It was great to talk to you.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.
These days, having versatile clothing you can wear anywhere is a must. That's why American Giant makes clothing that fits into your life and is made to last. Plus, with an impressive selection of staples to choose from, there's something for everyone. And it's all made right here in the USA. Find your new wardrobe staples at American-Giant.com and get 20% off your order when you use code WA23 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com. Promo code WA23.
Dunkin' Iced Radio, take one.
Dunkin' Iced Coffee is... Ooh, sorry, one more time? Dunkin' Iced it... Ooh, Kelly, we're trying to record a timely summer-focused radio spot for Dunkin' Iced. Can you stop with the shaking?
But this is the sound a Dunkin' Ice makes. Maybe you should keep it in?
Well, yeah, that's actually a pretty good idea. Try all the Dunkin' refreshers, iced coffees, cold brews, and lattes. Dunkin' Iced. America runs on Dunkin'.